Hello, welcome to Sacerdotus Hangouts. Yesterday, it was a sad day in the entertainment world, also the science fiction world. Leonard Nimoy, who was well known as Mr. Spock, passed away. So it's a sad day for the Star Trek fandom. And Nimoy passed away at the age of 83 after battling pulmonary disease. He was a heavy smoker, but had quit about 20 years ago. Despite this, the damage had already taken effect and it would eventually take his life. He was admitted to the hospital a couple of days ago complaining of chest pains due to the pulmonary disease, the condition that became aggravated as he smoked throughout the years of his life. Nimoy was born in Boston, right here in Massachusetts, on March 26, 1931. His parents were of Ukrainian descent and were Orthodox Jews, so he was Jewish. His father was a barber. Nimoy had many roles during his acting career, but obviously he was more known for portraying the extraterrestrial from the planet Vulcan, who struggled with his dual species, human and Vulcan. The character Spock had religious roots. Despite being from a civilization of reason and logic, the Vulcans were often portrayed as being a spiritual and religious extraterrestrial race. And interestingly enough, Nimoy, who was Jewish himself, incorporated a Hebrew priest's blessing called the Kohanim. And many of you have seen this gesture where he lifts up his hand. He makes a V sign by separating his fingers and tells to other humans or Captain Kirk or whoever he was addressing or saying farewell to, he would say, live long and prosper. Well, the V shape, there's a reason for all these different things in the greeting or the gesture. The V shape, made by separating the middle finger and the ring finger, represents the letter Shin of the Hebrew alphabet, which is the first letter for Shaddai, a name of God. And we see this name mentioned a couple of times in the Old Testament in the book of Exodus. And it's a term that was used by the Canaanites who had these different gods, a pantheon of gods. And what they did was they described God in different ways by naming his attributes and but in a polytheistic way. So they believed in God similar to Hinduism, where they believe in one God, but they see this God as different personalities or different concepts. So, interestingly enough, God Himself, the God of the Hebrews, the God who spoke to Isaac, Abraham, Jacob, Moses, etc., identify Himself as Shaddai, which is interesting because many times atheists bring up the question, which God, in their arguments or discussions, as if there are different gods out there that people have to account for. And this is not the case at all. This shows the ignorance of theology and human culture, history, and things of that nature. Whereas these different names for gods, these different gods for the lowercase g, are really ways that primitive man tried to define the one reality called God, which we call God today with a capital God. So Zeus, Ra, Osiris, Shaddai, all these different terms, these different designations for different gods were just the attempt of primitive man trying to describe God, the one absolute being, by applying different concepts, different human understandings to this reality, to this God. God of fertility, God of rain, God of this, God of that. And that's why the whole argument that there's 3,000 plus gods out there, and which one are you going to provide evidence for, is really a ridiculous question. And it backfires on atheists because he or she does not understand that primitive man was just trying his or her best to explain God, to define God. And the best they could was by using their own human experiences, their own human knowledge, the way they understood the world. The God of lightning, the God of weather, the God of this, the God of that. That's the best way they could in order to define the one reality called God. Now, with Judaism and Christianity, it's different because God actually reveals himself. So man doesn't have to do anything. Man doesn't have to try to figure out who this God is, what this God is, what's this God's name. God comes to them. He comes to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Noah, all the way down until he actually came in the human form and the second person of Blessed Trinity, Jesus Christ, and revealed himself. And again, he uses different names throughout this course of history. Shaddai being one of them, Elohim, El, Yahweh, Emmanuel, Jesus, Christ. All these different terms, these different words represent God, the reality, the one reality of God. It's not that there's different gods. Shaddai is one God, Elohim is one God, Yahweh is one God, Jesus is one God, Christ is one God, Emmanuel is one God. No, these are just designation terms that God, in this case, used to communicate with the human race, with the Jews, with the Hebrews. And Spock, or Leonard Nimoy, by incorporating this Jewish blessing, this Hebrew priest's blessing, was recalling that V shape of the letter Shin in the Hebrew alphabet. And it also represents another S word, Shalom, which means peace, and another S word, which is Shekinah, which is a feminine or motherly aspect of God as creator. And in the Old Testament, we see passages where God is described as a fowl, as a bird, almost like a chicken, a hen, taking care of the chicks, putting them under their wings. Now, this doesn't mean that God is a bird all of a sudden, or God turned into a hen, or God is a woman or a mother. It doesn't mean that at all. These are metaphors, ways of describing God as the creator. In this case, in a feminine sense, like a mother taking care of the chicks. So what's funny is that all these years watching Star Trek, everyone was getting a subliminal message or a subliminal Jewish blessing from Spock in the name of El Shaddai or Yahweh. So every time we saw on TV Spock raising his hand, making that V shape, saying live long and prosper, he's pretty much was blessing people, the viewers, in the name of the Hebrew God, El Shaddai, Yahweh, Elohim, El, etc., 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 which is, of course, the same as Jesus Christ, who's part of the Trinity, Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And the irony is that I have seen on Twitter and other social networks some atheists use the image of Mr. Spock as if he were some icon for atheism. And that's just wrong at all. They obviously did not understand the meaning of the gesture of it originating from a Hebrew priest and the way the Hebrew priest blessed the people in the name of El Shaddai. As Spock would say, fascinating. Anyhow, as a fan of Star Trek, I'm saddened by the death of Leonard Nimoy. He's going to be missed greatly. I don't know how the franchise is going to continue without him. Whenever somebody mentions Star Trek, the first thing you think of is that pointy ear, raised eyebrow, slick hair with a Caesar cut character, Spock. That's the first person that usually comes to mind. Even though we see William Shatner all over the place nowadays on those Priceline commercials and whatnot, and George Takei or Sulu obviously promoting the LGBT agenda, but they don't really represent or are the face of Star Trek as Leonard Nimoy was Spock. And I'm even brave enough to say that not even Patrick Stewart or Captain Picard has that ability of representing Star Trek as being the face of Star Trek, and definitely not Catherine McGrew, aka Captain Janeway, who's the first female captain um, in the franchise. So Leonard Nimoy, he was a great actor and inspired his fans, including me, to use logic, reason, and faith via his portrayal of the spiritual extraterrestrial Mr. Spock. And it's interesting that in the last movie that he appeared in 2009, the remake with the younger cast, there's a scene where he tells the younger Spock to set aside logic and do what's right, to have faith, to take chances. And I found that scene to be very powerful because he's obviously a Vulcan and he grew up in this culture that values stoicism and logic and reason and purging your emotions and whatnot. And then when he grows older, I guess the wisdom set in. He starts to realize that his human side is not so bad at all. That there's nothing wrong with having emotions. There's nothing wrong on taking a gamble in life, having faith, and not thinking like a utilitarian, calculating every move that you're going to make in life, using a calculus for every thought, every action that you're going to make. To just let go and live. And that was a powerful scene again, seeing Spock say that as this character evolved from the younger Spock all the way to this older Spock because the Vulcans in the series live longer than humans. So he had literally a lifetime to really mature and grow and realize that logic is not everything. You need faith, and faith is part of being a human being. We can't become mindless robots working on calculus or algorithms. We need to have faith. We need to believe. It's part of being human. It's part of evolving, taking chances in order to learn by mistakes, because of course we are going to make mistakes. So, anyhow, I was happy to see him reprise the role of Spock in the remake of Star Trek in 2009 with the younger cast. And interestingly enough, it seems like Leonard Nimoy was saying goodbye on Twitter. And I'm going to read to you his last tweet, which was sent on February 23rd, 2015 at 2:36 a.m. And he wrote, quote, "A life is like a garden. Perfect moments can be had, but not preserved, except in memory. LLAP," end quote. And of course, the LLAP was the greeting or the farewell greeting of Spock. Live long and prosper. So, rest in peace, Leonard Nimoy, aka Mr. Spock. You're going to be missed. The series, the franchise is not going to be the same without you. And thanks for the memories. Live long and prosper. Up there with El Shaddai. And the next thing I want to talk about is extremely disturbing, and it bothers me to the core, not only as a former atheist, but as a blogger right now. And this blogger, Avijit Roy, an atheist blogger, was hacked to death. He was chopped up to death for his crime. Guess what? His crime was just speaking out against Islam, against religious extremism. And this is unfortunate. And this happened in Bangladesh. And apparently he was walking through Dhaka on Thursday. And he was just surrounded by a crowd. And he was attacked. And he had just come from a book fair at a university in Dhaka. And he was just targeted, beaten up, hacked to death. And obviously it was because he spoke out against Islam. And it's unfortunate. It saddens me that these things happen and are happening in 2015. And, just imagine you walking there with your wife or friend or anybody or by yourself, and a group of people come out of nowhere with meat cleavers and start attacking you, hacking at you, like if you were some cattle or something that was going to be slaughtered in order to be sold on the market or something. It's just horrible, despicable how evil these people can be. And all because of a blog voicing his own opinions. How insecure are you guys? And I'm speaking to those people of any religion, and even those who are atheists, who have an issue with other people criticizing them. How insecure are you in your ideas that you feel the need to resort to violence just because somebody voiced an opinion against your views or your beliefs? Get over it. It's not the end of the world. We all are different. We're not clones. People think differently. People will have different ideas, different opinions. And guess what? That's good. That's good. Like God would say, He looked at the creation and said it's good. That's the way God wanted it to be. He wanted us to be different. He didn't want us to be clones of each other. He wants us to have different views, opinions, to think for ourselves. That's why we have this beautiful organ called the brain, which is capable of so much things, contemplating things, imagining things that don't even exist in this universe, and in many cases making it exist, such as technology and the ability to go to the moon, things that seemed impossible. The human brain made it possible. And this is a gift that God has given us, to be able to think for ourselves, to voice our opinions, to come to all kinds of conclusions. But He also gave us the gift of conscience. We have to know right from wrong. And beating up people, killing them, attacking them in any way, even verbally, emotionally. It's just wrong. And it's a bad reflection on yourself that you're so insecure in your own ideas, your own beliefs, that you need to resort to this kind of behavior. Like a little spoiled brat crying for any little thing. I mean, what is a blog going to do against a religion that's hundreds of years old? I mean, there are many blogs out there criticizing Christianity, Catholicism in particular, and especially those Christians that hold to creationist views. There's so many blogs out there criticizing and attacking Christianity. Are those blogs going to destroy Christianity or bring down the Catholic Church? Of course not. Those are just blogs of people who want to write and voice their views on different things. They might convince some people, they might not convince some people, but be as it may, the blog is not going to do anything to the religion itself or to our government. If I write something attacking the US government or criticizing the US government or North Korea or something, the governments are not going to collapse after I press post. That's not going to happen. I'm just voicing my views, my ideas. And this brings up another topic with that's going on in the church. Not in the church itself, but in the Catholic blogosphere. It's a big discussion about this. And it's with Father Rosica, a priest from the Vatican, who's from the Basilian Order. And he's suing a Catholic blogger because the blogger criticized him during the synod that took place back in October. And this priest is suing him. And I'm still trying to figure that out. A priest who's supposed to be a man of God, a man who's supposed to forgive. And during Lent of all time, he's suing a Catholic blogger. Now, of course, there's two sides to every story. So I'm not going to say that the priest is wrong or the priest is right, or the blogger is wrong, the blogger is right. But just the act of a priest suing, taking that route is just disturbing. I mean, I understand if the blogger made threats against his life or his family's life or something, or was stalking him or something like that. But none of that happened. And the guy just gave his opinions on certain things that he didn't like, that this priest said and did during the synod, and the priest wants to sue him. And here we have this blogger who wrote a blog and criticized Islam and religious extremism and whatnot, and he was hacked to death. It's just I don't know, I can't even find the word. It's just disturbing, and I hope the people that did this are caught and are prosecuted, and because it doesn't matter who it is, if it's a Christian blogger, Catholic blogger, Protestant blogger, Hindu, atheist, whatever it is, you know, they have a right to voice their opinions and ideas, and shouldn't feel the need to be afraid that they're going to be killed or beaten up or arrested for using their God-given talents of free thinking, voicing their own opinions, thinking differently, and whatnot. Because what would this world come to if nobody can say anything anymore? Now, I understand that you're going out there to troll people and harass people. But if you're just voicing your concerns and giving your input and your opinion on certain movements or groups or religions or no religions or governments, whatever, and you're not threatening anybody, you're just saying in 500 or more words, I disagree, then that shouldn't be a cause for your death or it shouldn't put a bullseye on you for people to attack you physically or verbally or any other way. Just offer a rebuttal to your argument. Don't go and attack people, kill people for thinking differently from you, of you, or from you. So that's pretty much what's been going on right now. That I'm going to talk about today, tonight, this morning, and made this blogger, rest in peace, Avijit Roy. Even though he was an atheist, may he rest in peace. May God forgive him of his sins and hopefully have mercy on him. And just like he had mercy on the thief on the cross. Um, because this man did not deserve to be hacked to death, even though he was an atheist. Nobody deserves that. Doesn't matter if you believe in God or don't believe in God, or your race or your sexual preference. No one should be attacked or killed or beaten up or verbally harassed or whatever for being different. It's just wrong, immoral, and it has to stop. It's 2015. Those people who believe in religion too strongly, or they need to mature. I mean, your faith is not disappear overnight just because somebody writes a blog. If you want to make the case for your religion, then follow your religion. Follow the precepts of your religion. Don't turn your religion into this vindictive force because you're hurting it. Anyhow, thank you for listening. God bless and Mary keep.